are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Here are Brad, Lisa, Brian, and Darren.
Welcome to another edition of the ITMOD CHATcast. Joining me is Lisa Gullickson, Wife Dork.
Hello.
Yep. And Brad Gullickson, Mouth Dork.
Hello.
And I'm your host, Darren Smith, the Disco Dork. And welcome to another edition of the ITMOD podcast CHATcast.
Yeah.
Yay. Shout out to Indie Dork, Billy Das. He is not in the studio with us right now.
But he's in our hearts.
And he's in this interview, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So just the other day, you lovely dorks had the privilege and awesome opportunity to go and do an interview with Ingrid Jungermann at the Alamo Draft House in Winchester, where we are the official podcast, with thanks to Andy Gyrison. Folks, you may know or remember her name because she is in the film Women Who Kill, and that was a film that ITMODcast sponsored at Lost Weekend. Which Lost Weekend was this? Seven. Yes. Unfortunately, I had school duties, so I was not able to make this interview, but my fellow dorks did me proud and held it down. So, Brad and Lisa, I'll let you take it away as far as this intro.
Well, first things first, we did not have our studio set up in the projection booth like we normally would have. We had to do some iPhone shenanigans to make it happen. So after this intro, the sound quality might not be as strong.
It's not bad, though.
It's not
sounds
bad?
good.
It's not bad.
Okay.
Oh, good.
I'm happy to hear that.
I did hit the table twice. Do you hear that? I get excited.
It's okay. It's understandable.
What's funny about this interview is obviously we were already fans of Women Who Kill. It's a great film. It's just got nominated for an Independent Spirit Award. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. It's worth checking out. In preparation for this interview, we dove deep into Ingrid Jungermann. Lisa,
I read practically every interview she had online, and then we went to Vimeo and we watched both of her web series. So she has two. She has The Slope, which was her first one. It's kind of low budge, but really funny. And then her next one, F to Seventh, which is a little bit higher budget. She had a sponsor for that, I think. And they're both extremely funny little snippets. They're like 3 to 4 minutes about like what it's like to be a lesbian living in Park Slope.
and by the end of this research, Lisa and I had become mega fans.
Yeah.
So much so that when we finally met Ingrid up in the projection booth, we were falling all over ourselves.
We were starstruck. And it's been a while that since we've done like a face-to-facer. We've done a couple of Skype interviews. And I just was not prepared for how excited. Like, and I had brought my lovely fountain pen to, take notes and stuff. But I couldn't. I had to keep my pen under the table because my hands were shaking. So if you notice that I sound a little flustered, it's because I am.
I think I certainly do too. And I really am frustrated with my opening question.
He was trying to do the Darren and roll into a cue, but he couldn't do it.
It's okay. And as you listeners will see, all of this nervousness was all for naught because it turns out she is really cool.
Yeah.
She's really
cool.
She really showed us up with coolness.
Yeah.
We were really nerdy, and she was super sweet.
Yeah. So we hope you enjoy the interview.
I think that you should look up the picture. I'll put this at the end. This is I'll tell you something later after the interview. Please listen to the interview. Oh, and if you haven't watched the movie, we do talk spoilers about the movie in the interview. So please watch the movie now and then enjoy the interview.
Yes.
It's a great movie. I freaking love that movie. It's so funny.
It is funny.
It's dry. It's cinematic. It's beautiful to look at. And you'll just fall in love with it, just like we did.
Yeah. So thank you, dorks. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Indie
Billy.
Dork, for putting this all together. Ladies and gentlemen, Ingrid Jungermann.
Okay, and here we are recording from the beautiful Alamo Draft House projection room.
Yay!
We are thrilled and excited to have Ingrid Jungermann here in the podcast arena with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I like that when you said beautiful, you looked at me.
Stop making eyes at her.
I can't help it. I've been watching
F to 7th.
F to 7th, and there's lots of flirtation going on
There
there.
is.
There is.
Makes me very self-conscious.
Subtle.
Yeah.
Subtle flirtation.
But it's between everybody. There's a lot of chemistry through that whole.
So obviously we're thrilled and excited, maybe even a little nervous. We first saw Women Who Kill at the Lost Weekend 7 Film Festival. We were happy to sponsor that there and became instant fans. And it spawned a lot of good conversation at that festival also. We won't go spoilery because people are slow
I was
discovering.
planning
not?
on
No?
going spoilery.
No? Are we?
I want to
mean,
know all the secrets.
It's out. It's on VOD right
Yeah.
now. Like, you
Yeah.
can rent
You
it.
can
So,
spoil it,
look,
I think.
full stop, pause, rent the movie, watch it if you haven't, and then come back. Because spoilery questions.
Done.
Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there was lots of debate over the ending of the film.
Great.
And we had several fights all the way into the evening.
Me and Billy specifically, if you recall. Yes.
But I can't remember where
I was right, I'm sure. I can't remember which side I was
Where
on.
did you fall, Lisa?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
There was passionate positions held. Sometimes they escape. That's okay. That's okay.
Anyway, so we're excited. And we can't wait to watch it again with the Film Club 3.0 crowd. So yes, it's a film about podcasters. We're on a podcast. It seems like that is an arena where everybody has a podcast these days. It's almost like a butt of a joke. Why set your characters into that world?
It came later, far later in a draft, because when I first wrote the many drafts of the script, they started out as grad students, which was boring, and then they were writers working on a nonfiction book, and then that was boring, and then I kept getting feedback where they needed to have something that they were doing that was more visual, which is funny because podcasting isn't visual at all, but I didn't want to make them filmmakers because that's one of my major pet peeves in film. Filmmakers that make movies by themselves. Their work. And so podcasting kind of came up, and around the same time I had listened to Serial, and I was like, oh, that's where I want to go with this. And so Brooklyn podcast, the whole thing just started to work.
did you listen to S-Town after that?
I did.
So good.
I loved S-Town.
Me too.
Made me cry a bunch.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So the podcasting came after the idea of, was it exploring the relationships, or was it the true crime aspect, or what came first?
Well, the movie was always sort of my screwed up version of a rom-com in a way, and especially because growing up in Florida in a religious situation, and growing up kind of feeling a little lost, and in a way like learning that I was gay but not knowing that yet, in a place that it just wasn't safe to be gay, and then knowing that with a religious background, literally you falling in love could mean your death. I wanted to kind of explain to people that like the queer experience of romantic comedy is never seen, because our first love experience is usually deals with darkness. So that was part of the kind of, I wanted to do a queer romantic comedy, and for me there's no separation of darkness with that. So the rom-com part of it was kind of the first layer, and then the deeper layer was then getting into like the true crime elements and the podcasty elements, and women as murderers. That was important to me too, because guys get to have all the fun. We write characters and they're automatically kind of the dark, like the perpetrators essentially, and women are victims. So I wanted to kind of switch that and make the women also perpetrators as well as victims.
That was actually what I really dug about the movie, was like the variety of women characters that you had on the screen. Like it wasn't, because like it's a lot of times you get kind of like, here is this woman in this movie, and like woman is like, here's your representation. I have a woman in the movie. That's your representation.
Right,
it's like,
yeah.
Women are mean, women are murderers, women are psychopaths, women are high maintenance, women are scared. Like there's all the same different the different varieties that you would see otherwise. And I liked the scope of characters that you got to see in that movie. It was really good.
Thank you.
I like the exploration of trust in a relationship, because when you meet someone and you're really into them, you hang out with them all the time, and you tell them all of your secrets, and you give them all of your personal information. And when we first got together, me and Brad,
Oh,
I
no.
used to.
Oh my!
I used to joke about, like, if Brad wanted to murder me, he could just do it. And if I wanted to murder Brad, I'd really have to, like, plot and scheme. But, like...
So this is actually not something that she has let go.
No,
She
I haven't.
brings this up on a fairly regular basis.
The truth of the matter is, you never really know who you're with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I hate this joke.
it's not a joke.
I know.
It's serious.
When I come in at the right time.
So when was the exact genesis of, okay, this is also going to be a murder mystery?
Yeah, I mean, so it's all kind of wrapped into the same genesis. So I knew I wanted to kind of play with the rom-com tropes, and I also wanted to do a murder mystery. So it was all kind of built in the same way. And the murder, like being a metaphor for love, sort
Right.
of. And like not knowing the person you're with, and throwing yourself into a really quick relationship, and risking a lot of things, and could put you in danger later. That idea, or the other side of it, which was, is it that you have such a fear of intimacy, that you're seeing this other person as a threat when really they're just trying their best.
So you're saying that what I have is a fear of intimacy with Brad?
I don't know. Or
I'll just say that.
depends on
Yeah.
if you think Simone's a murderer or not.
Oh, yeah. I won't talk. Okay,
Just know that I have the power.
he does. He really does. But the movie is about a relationship with. Morgan is really in two relationships. She's in the relationship with Jean, and then the relationship with Simone. And so, so when you did your first web series, you were doing it like in a relationship, and then you were not in a relationship. Did you find yourself going back to that time in your life when you were pulling what it was like for Jean and Morgan to work together?
Yeah, and I mean at the time too, so it's like a combination of many relationships and kind of exploring why I had kind of failed at most of them, or at least felt I did.
Right.
But at the time I was just starting to write Women Who Kill. I was living with my girlfriend. And then through the process of rewriting, we broke up and still lived together. So it was like using
Oh, so it's like directly.
Yeah, exactly. And we're best friends now. So that all worked
that's
out.
nice.
But it was using my current living situation as like, comedy. So that's all definitely pulled from my life directly.
So since we're talking about sort of the creation of characters, like we've chatted with Tyler McIntyre, who was the writer-director for Tragedy Girls, which I don't know if you've seen that.
No.
It's fun.
High school serial killer girls who are obsessed with social media recognition for the things that they're doing. If you haven't seen, you should see
It
that.
sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Also,
I
it
think
sounds
you're
like a
actually going to
TV show.
super dig that movie. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And then we talked with like Chris Peckover, who did Better Watch Out, which is another kind of like youthful sort of serial killer coming up. But like, how did you get into? Like, how do you get into the headspace to put serial killers on your screen? Because I'm going to be honest, some of the disagreement that we had after watching that movie was like, just who in the fuck is a serial killer in that movie? Right. Personal opinion, everybody. That's my personal theory.
I'm just saying that the box was on the roof, and who would bring the box to the roof? Thank you.
But so there's a lot.
Feelings
of
coming back.
Serial killer-ness expressed through that. So like, what are you looking at? What are you getting into to kind of like put some authenticity to those characters as you see them on screen?
I mean, I'm not really sure. Can you ask that again?
Well, like, how do you get into the mind space of a serial killer? Like, you reading like true crime to express that, or because I think what I'm really getting at is that the characters feel very genuine, and there is that air of danger about them. And I mean, Annette O'Toole's serial killer, like, holy shit, you wrote an amazing part for her. Like, that's amazing. But like, it feels very genuine and very authentic. And so I'm kind of curious, like, where does that come from? Does that come from like I'm working out emotional issues while I'm looking at this, and I'm pulling the heart from that, or are you reading a lot of true crime novels?
It seems like they're very passionate. I mean, what I responded so much to about this film is it's a geek film in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
Is, they love the true crime. They love the characters of true crime. They love the reality of true crime. And, is that something that you were fascinated with early on.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, I get it now.
I stumbled all over that. It takes me a little while.
So yeah, like growing up, Anne Rule was definitely like a popular book to have around.
Ted Bundy book.
Ted Bundy and
Stranger.
Small Sacrifices was a major, which I put in the film too. So as a young person, not only true crime but horror. Like as a very young girl, I had 2 older siblings, and we were going to, the video store, and our first stop was horror. So it was like a real darkness at a young age. And then true crime and bad true crime movies, like they were like so many true crime 80s movies that we would watch together as a family. So it was like kind of already there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. And then as I started to research this movie, I ordered some books. It's kind of hard to find, but specifically around female serial killers, which is very rare. And reading about those women, it really struck me that many of them had been victims of their own sort of trauma. And I guess potentially male too, but especially women. And it was like, just looking at the differences between gender when you're talking about murder was really interesting to me. I mean, I could talk about this forever, but then I was like, do men just get to murder more just because that's what's been sold to us? It's like, so I want to be like, what if we put more lady murderers in movies? Then will we be at equal ground on the murder level?
So you're helping women take back the murder.
She's all about
Taking
representation.
No, respect. Good for you. Yeah, that's awesome. I like it.
I read in another interview you referenced an article by Marissa Harrison, and I could only read the abstracts because trying to read academic papers on the internet is impossible. But I found it really interesting, first, that all of the statistics pointed to me specifically as probably being a serial killer. But that's okay.
Well, we've already discussed this.
Like when you're doing your research for a movie, do you tend to get like academic in your research, or do you pull, because you clearly pull a lot from your personal life? But
I mean, I felt like a responsibility to true crime, and if they're obsessed with it, if they're nerds about it, then I wasn't the nerd about it. I had to be a little bit more knowledgeable about like what they would look into, and like, they probably, those 2 characters probably have heard every true crime podcast and read every true crime book, and so I wanted to at least be responsible to them as characters, to like get to know what they do for a living a little bit more. So that's what I kind of feel like when I'm writing. Like if I feel like there's something that, for instance, my new script, the lead character's a mediator who mediates conflict between people. I have no idea about that, so I contacted New York Mediation Center or whatever, and we sat down, we did an interview, and the guy was really helpful about, and it's not necessarily like the facts of the job, but it's like how the room looks, and like what do they sit down, and then what do they have a file, and what do they read, and how do they, it's kind of like getting the details of it so that it feels real when you're watching it is important to me.
Can we just take a detour back slightly to the young you watching horror movies with the family? Number one, like what's the age range for this? Here's why I'm asking. Because I have 3 young daughters, and my oldest daughter is 8, and she is like actively right now pushing to be like, I want to see these horror movies, because she sees me scrolling through trailers or movie posters, and she's like, I want to watch that, and she's pointing at Tragedy Girls. She's like, I like the colors on that poster, I'd like to see this movie. I'm like, well, I don't know what the rules are for that. But so how old were you, and like what were the movies that you look back at and are like, those were the formative years of like my introduction to horror? Right.
I mean, I would say it was probably post-divorce, so I was probably around 8, 9, something like that. And it wasn't, I don't ever remember feeling that policed. The only thing that we were not allowed to rent was Faces of Death. That was it.
That's a strong line.
Hard stop.
That was it. And, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm not saying I should have watched that shit when I was young, but like, no, I am saying that. I'm sorry. I am saying I probably should have. But like, and as a kid, I remember being like, whatever, fine. I didn't feel or remember a time where I was like deeply affected by it. Now I cannot handle. Wolf Creek walked out.
Whoa.
I was like, I can't do it anymore. And it's like, since there was a certain point in my life where I was just like, I won't watch this.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I was raised not allowed to watch anything, hardly.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
Did you
I
become more of like a horror nerd after that? Or?
yeah, I didn't even know I didn't like horror movies. Like, I went to my first horror movie, I'm like, oh my god! I was with Brad. I was like 24 years old, and I was like, what is this?
Hostel Part 2.
Hostel Part 2. Whoa. Weeping. It was terrible.
Well, see, there's differences, I think, between that, which I don't even think is horror. I think it's like torture pornography.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen Hostel because I won't. But
Yeah,
it's
you
like,
shouldn't.
Well, I
He
just.
shouldn't. Probably.
But there's like psychological horror,
Right.
Yeah.
Which I love,
Yeah.
which I'm fascinated by. And I was also attracted to your movie because of that, because it goes so much into the psychology and interpersonal relationships. I was so much more about the relationships between the women than I was about the murder mystery.
Yeah.
Well, what I found so wonderful about Women Who Kill is that there are moments that are genuinely scary. I think the conversation with Annette O'Toole goes to a like beyond dark, like genuinely upsetting conversation. And I
The second one, or
I love that.
Oh, good.
And you carry that moment over into the climax when things are also going south for our characters.
Yeah.
And you there are genuine stakes. There's like real fear. Now, you've mentioned in previous interviews your affection for like the Coen brothers, and I think that's something that they do really well, where they're balancing tone. I mean, were you shooting this in chronological order, or were you? I mean, what was the production schedule of it?
Not chronological. No, we only shot 20 days, so we were kind of running
wherever you could.
Wherever we could, yeah.
So how do you play with that tone? How do you balance?
Yeah.
When do you know, like, I need to be funny, I need to be heartfelt, I need to be creepy, scary?
Yeah. Well, I mean, another spreadsheet. There was
Yes!
definitely
Yay!
an emotional spreadsheet for me that I made for myself because I knew that I would be very confused. A lot of times my script supervisor would be like, okay, where am I? I have no idea where I am with where I am emotionally. But specifically, it was more about Simone. So I knew that we had to, and Sheila Vand is incredible.
Yes! I love her.
Huge fan.
I am a huge fan of
She's
her.
a dream.
I talked to her a little bit I did an interview with the filmmakers for 68 Kill, which if you haven't, she's fucking crazy town in that movie. It's awesome.
She's so good.
Yes, she is good at everything she does. I'm sorry. So
No,
I'm
and she's
a
also
huge
just
fan.
A pro and pleasant and fun and all the things. So
Right.
you should be a fan.
Okay, sorry.
But we had established a shorthand where I could say, okay, you're murderer, Simone, you're innocent, Simone, and then there was kind of a middle ground where we called it alien, which she'd just kind of be out there.
Cool.
And so, I mean, she'd nail it every take, so it's like, okay, we got 111, and then in the editing room we were able to be like, okay, do we want the audience to feel, where do we want them to feel at this point? And we were able to do that because of Sheila, really.
Yeah.
Without her being able to nail those different, basically plot points in a character, we wouldn't have been able to play with you guys.
And Annette O'Toole, you had worked with before in your web series.
Yeah.
She played your mom. Very different type of nefarious character. I've always had a huge crush on Annette O'Toole ever since Superman 3.
Yeah, she's crushable.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, how did you connect with her originally for?
I got really lucky because I had put out it was just a casting, her agent knew my web series and thought she'd be good for that role, and then we just had a phone conversation and connected. She's also incredible, and she added a lot of her own darkness to that she's like a pro too, so she brought all this stuff to it. And also, I did a lot of backstory on that character.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah, just like what were her murders and how did she do it, and getting inside the head of that person did make me feel really sick. But it's like also, and I never forget, I ever since I remember seeing what was the Nurse Ratched?
Oh, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yeah. I never liked how that nurse was written because she was a villain. And like, wait, she's a nurse. That doesn't make, you know.
How'd she get here?
Yeah. And
Right.
like, and I was like, nobody who's a villain thinks they're a villain. So like, how can my character actually think she's just like, no, this was the right thing to do. So it was getting inside of that where you're like, no, I killed for love. Like, you don't understand.
That's so good.
What do you call that? Love. You're like, oh, that's the moment.
Yeah.
That's the moment where I was like, I feel nauseous. Yeah, it's such a great scene.
But you do lose a bit of, you know, like you die a little every time you fall for something.
Mm-hmm.
There goes part of yourself is where I was trying to kind of.
I'm sorry. That's blowing my mind. Like, I love that dynamic that it comes out of the movie. Like, and it does. Like, I think sometimes like people is like, this is where I was going. This is the spirit of the movie. Like, I think Women Who Killed, like, that movie lives and breathes these relationships and that metaphor for love and death and vulnerability. Like, it comes out of it in every way, shape, or form. It's awesome.
And I never get to talk about the metaphor really because you can only do that with film nerds.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, let's talk about that because that's what I was trying to do, and then this is what and then, you know. So it's really nice for me to be able to talk about that.
I also like how you represent the awkwardness of the beginning of a relationship. So like how Morgan is kind of folding Simone into her friends and her community, and so she has the opportunity to kind of see her community through somebody else's eyes, and it's not like reciprocated because Simone doesn't have any people. So do you feel like that's an advantage for Simone or a disadvantage for Simone? That she doesn't have a community, so she doesn't have to go through the embarrassing process of going, these are my gross friends. You know what I mean?
Well,
being
no,
weird.
because I think, you know, I have a real soft spot for Simone. I think she doesn't have anybody. And like, and she doesn't have friends. And she's kind of like alone, and everyone's kind of left her. And I think that scene where she goes to the bachelorette party is a lonely scene for her. She tried. She wasn't on the email list. Like, she was kind of just like rejected.
Yeah.
And once again, she's just like cast out from the group. And so for me, it's just kind of sad that she just isn't part of anything.
I always just saw her as so cool, though. So I saw her in that room.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, well, the reason she is on the outside is because she's just so flippin' cool.
Yeah. For me, I mean, that's awesome. I love that. But for me, she was just like really tried. Everybody just kind of assumes she's cool and like doesn't need stuff and isn't desperate, but she is. She's just lost. And that's how poor Simone.
Yeah.
Poor Simone. Oh man.
That's my perspective.
No, nope. I like it. I like everything about it. That's all I have to say about it. Yeah.
So, you know, we're about to screen it here in Winchester, Virginia, and you know, you're very much a Brooklynite. You know, you come from a strong sense of place, and I'm just kind of curious, you know, what your experiences have been taking this film out on the road, coming to places like this where you know, everybody has different points of view, and how some people respond to me. What's been the response from, you know, the outside of your area?
It's been really positive across the board, and like there's been such interesting reactions. Like, some of the weirdest reactions I got were at queer festivals of women asking me things like, so are you into strangling, or like really personal?
Wow.
Yeah, like
Hi.
like that.
You don't know me.
Yeah, and I was like, I'll get back to that. And then, you know, like at BFI, there was this elderly farmer, a white straight guy, and he was in the front row, and he was asking kind of offensive questions about lesbianism, but so excited about the movie, he just didn't know how to ask the questions. And, you know, people are getting offended, and I was like, no. He's like, my lesbian friend told me to come. I didn't know it was a lesbian movie. And then he's so like loved it so much. He's like, I've never seen a world like this. I didn't know that this is how lesbians talked. You know, so it was like really sweet. And there's been just such a spectrum of reactions. But I have to say I haven't felt like, at least to my face, I haven't gotten like a negative queer, like homophobic or anti-gay thing, because I think it's about relationships, and people respond to that more than, and they forget that it's a queer world.
Like, I'm a white straight guy,
Yeah.
so not my set of realm in any way, shape, or form issues that I have to deal with. But like that, honestly, that as a person who wants to see more representation on the screen, that is what I love specifically about Women Who Kill. It is a movie about relationships. The people in relationships happen to be women across all the different lines, but it is a relationship movie, and it makes it so relatable for however you think, whatever your approach are. Like, you can see the humanness of the characters, and I love that so much.
Did you have a broader audience in mind when you were making the film? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always want to kind of like cater to my like queer audience, just because it's like family. And it's like they've supported me. They're the ones that watch The Slope and then F to 7 at first. And I feel like there's always like little things I try to do just for the queer community. Like, here's a joke for you. But then understanding that, like, if we're really going to have a conversation about this, then like, let's make this story universal first. I have an innate interest, and I feel like a responsibility to make a story universal, because I'm not making a movie for myself in a room. I'm making a movie for your audience, and I hope all different kinds of people. So for me, it's important to draw people in based on the story and the characters, and not like the politics first.
Right.
That's got to be a hard line to walk, though.
Yeah. And I always, satire is like my favorite thing. So I always am injecting political thought in there. But it's. I mean, even in the script I'm writing out, so it's pretty much more a straightforward rom-com. But there's politics of right versus left in it. So it's kind of like, how dark do I go, and how do I ride that line of like, families from the South versus dealing with politics and a love story. So it's kind of, I don't know why I do it. It's so much harder.
It's more fun to watch. We appreciate it.
Do you like how do you check yourself on that? Because like Lisa was talking about, like, there's so much of yourself and your personal passions and your experiences in that. How do you check yourself from not getting into that too much? Because I know when I'm passionate about something, like, that passion just leaks out, and it's too much. It's like I'm shouting it at people about things, literally. How do you check that?
I mean, I think I've always...
Do you check that?
Yeah, because growing up, kind of always essentially riding a line. Growing up basically in a more right-wing area. Yeah. Having to fit in was protection. Yeah. So, like, you learn from a very early age how to navigate those two sides, and what's okay to say, and how do I pass, and like all that stuff. So, like, from a very early age, you're like already working that muscle. Yeah. But later on, you realize it's not hiding. It's kind of like, man, it's hard to explain, but it's like, how do I get you to listen to me? And it's not I'm just not a preachy person. I think that's a negative word. I'm not a pushy person to where I need you to understand my views. Yeah. I just want to kind of lay it on the table and then see what you think. So that's how I feel like my writing is a little, it's like, I don't know. I got a little lost.
But isn't that the conversation that we all need to have now? Like, we're in a place where nobody wants to talk with the other person's point of view in mind at all.
It's true.
Right.
It's true, and I've changed. Like, now I'm more forceful. I've lost family members over it.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't care anymore. But so maybe my word will change. I don't know. After the election,
Right.
Yeah, well, we all did.
Yeah, right. Now you're like, you know what? I can't worry about your feelings because you don't care about mine. So.
Right.
But from my own cinematic education, I think that's where I discovered empathy, right?
Yeah.
And in encountering a wide variety of stories, I feel like I become a better human from my suburban basement, in my parents' house. Because I didn't have a lot of experience with the outside world other than my television set, other than books and comic books and film. And I just think it's essential now for more people to watch more things and read more books and encounter every point of view to fill your own.
And then too, we didn't have streaming. Like we had our video store,
Blockbuster, or video library.
Totally. So you were also kind of searching secretly for things that you were confused about, or like, I'll just take that movie and nobody knows that I don't know. Like that's how I felt. I was like, I'm not gonna do the gay section, but I'll do the new release section where stuff isn't really gay.
I think
man,
like the revolution for like representation, even though it like exploded after the election, like really started on the internet, because that's where anybody could put anything they wanted, and then things like The Slope or whatever YouTubers attract all of these people, and then finally the people with the money who make the things go, oh my goodness, there's an audience for this.
Exactly.
But there's like the other side of now people can go and get exactly what they want, so they don't have to like broaden their minds. So there's like a flip side to that.
It's like such a win bummer.
Yeah. It is, although like I think still in marginalized communities there is a lack of representation. Mm-hmm. So there is still a lot of really cool stuff being found
right
on the internet that is like people that aren't being heard of yet. So I think whereas like for instance Issa Rae, her web series of course was like great and found and like started and she got her own show and that was all great. And but it hasn't happened that much.
Right.
Yeah.
Really. If you think about the shows that are out, it's getting better. Diversity is
right.
getting better, but like it's still kind of like.
Yeah, I read in another interview how you were interested in creating more diversity in terms of like socioeconomic status, because people who don't have money can't make movies, and how do we fix that gap?
That's the number one, I think, because socioeconomic diversity includes all kinds of diversity. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's where we really need to focus, because when all your art is created by people with financial privilege, it's very problematic. Like, what are those voices? So what you're getting is like, yeah, sure, there's like poverty porn movies made by rich people, but is that really the experience of a person that grew up like that? Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important that like everybody who gets to make an independent film comes from at least some sort of stability financially. And that is where I took out a shitload of student loans. That's how I wrote my movie. Mm-hmm. I'm in crazy debt to make my movie. A lot of other classmates who came from money were able to just like kind of ride a little so that they had parental support and then make their movies. And that's the fact. That's who makes movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Kids with money. And that, I think if we can start to change that, then we'll get some really interesting stuff. But that's where web series are cool too.
Right.
People with no money are making web series still.
So so as a so this is your business.
Yeah.
And this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
How do we have that conversation even? Like, where do you start that conversation? How do you, what do you see about the future of the business providing openings for independent filmmakers? Are you positive on it? Are you down on it? What do you think?
I'm positive on it because I think to be down on it is giving people power that shouldn't have it anymore.
Oh, I dig that.
Like, yeah, right? Like, the people in charge should go down. But what gives me hope is that the people in charge of, production companies, distribution companies, are a certain type of person, but the people that work under them they're like cinephiles, they're passionate, they're diverse, they are like ready to pick the next best movie. But the problem is they pitch a movie and the person in charge is like, I don't get it, no. Mm-hmm. So films aren't being bought for the reason that the top person is saying no. Mm-hmm. But I still believe that over time these people that are like more interesting will move up and start to be the heads. Mm-hmm. That's when I think things are going to start being interesting, because they're going to be saying yes to movies that they would say no to.
So I want to segue into a little bit, just very briefly, of what we were kind of talking about before this kicked off. So your financial relationship with your movie then is, number one, you have taken on a financial burden for yourself to get this produced. What's the distribution process look like for you? Because I was very interested in the theatrical versus the VOD and where the business of that is headed for you.
Yeah. So this movie didn't make any money. I didn't make any money. It is something I'm really proud of, that everybody's proud of, and it had a great run. Like, it got great reviews.
Yeah.
We did our own theatrical.
You just got nominated for an Independent Spirit Award.
Exactly.
That's huge.
It's like, and on this budget, I'm just so everything is just like a gift, because also we don't have the money to do any press around the Independent Spirit Awards. Like, that's what people don't understand. In order to even be nominated for these awards, or to apply, you have to have had theatrical. So when you think about that for a really low budget movie, and now in a time and place where we aren't getting theatrical deals, we're only getting digital, that means your low budget movie has to pay for a theatrical to even be considered for these awards. That's screwed up.
Yes.
Right? So then not only that, so we're nominated for the award. We can't do any press around it because we don't have any money.
So you can't hustle. What do you have
hustle.
to do? You have to, what does that look like then? Are
Punk
you
rock street teams.
Right.
I'll make
right?
a flyer.
I'm tired. Like, I'm on my next thing.
Right.
So it's like great that it's nominated, but like that's.
But you have to hang your hat on the nomination and hope, maybe it happens, but probably
not. I mean, the movies that it's up against, as far as if we win, it's like a coup. Like, even though it's like there's other lower budget movies, and we just there's no press around it. We don't have a publicist. We don't have screening rooms where we're showing the film to people to get them to vote. So it's like
independent film. There are tiers to independent film.
Exactly.
Okay, so you were in Women Who Kill was in Tribeca.
Yeah.
And you had not secured distribution prior to Tribeca?
No.
Okay, so Tribeca was your film debut to the world.
Yeah.
And then what came out of that was your relationship with FilmRise, right?
Yeah, we weren't able to sell the movie for a year, so it took a year to sell it. And we got many passes. My favorites were, and this was something that we heard repeatedly, was it was a little too niche for us, which to me is an interesting code word.
Goddamn.
And then FilmRise came along because Paradigm was our sales agent. Somebody at Paradigm was at a festival and met, up with his friend at FilmRise, and said, "Hey, I think you'd really like this movie," and they watched it and they really did like it. So they've been they really like the movie, which is great because a distributor to actually be excited about your film is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took a long time, and we were starting to consider self-distribution at that point. But I personally believe, I think that's kind of should be the wave of the future for low budget. But I think at that point in the movie where it was already done and out, it was too late for us to plan that, because you got to raise money for that too. So what I would do is when you have your budget made, put a line item in there that is for self-distribution, and you actually put 20, 30 grand in there when you're raising money, or however much it's going to take, and that means theatrical, that means social media, that means all the things, and then you're good, and then you just release it yourself, and you hire the team, because you can't do it yourself. Hire the team to do it, and you've already got it built into the budget. So that if I were making a movie at that level now, I'd put it in the budget already.
Yeah.
And self-distribute.
Because man.
But Sundance is doing some cool stuff with that too. Their creative distribution thing, which is they started a fellowship and a whole thing where they actually shepherd your self-distribution and connect you to a lot of people.
Well, right. So I think that's one of the challenges too, is because a lot of these independent filmmakers right now are it's your first time doing something. How the fuck do you know the ropes when you're going out there, and it's okay, well, if I had known this going out, I find that sort of thing to be very interesting, where you have people who are interested in showing them, hey, maybe this is what you should focus on in terms of kind of what you're doing. That's interesting that festivals are doing that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because then you have
hard.
to be in the
I
festival.
don't know. I would have never learned any of this if I hadn't gone through it, and I was lucky enough to make my movie, so it's kind of a hard.
Yeah.
But I also made 2 web series at very, very low budget.
Right.
At each up to 7, each season was 10 grand.
Yeah.
So it's I was able to make something and contain it
Now, did you take most of your production team from F to 7th to work on Women Who Kill, or did you take people that you had worked with? Like, what did you learn from the web series production that allowed you to take some knowledge to the set for Women Who Kill?
Well, the web series was like 5-person crew, so I knew that my goals were to make something more cinematic, and to set it sort of like up the stakes of story. And, it was a bigger budget, so I just had to crew up with people that could, not only like show up on, essentially for the web series, it's like, you busy, I want to work with you, let's do it. And we threw it all together, we just did it, Yeah. But I think it was a little bit more careful about choices of people that would like match the tone, people that could teach me something.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot more like thought that went into like building the crew and the look.
Was there anything you like missed, like while you were making the feature film? Was there anything like, if I was just doing this myself, I could just do it this way and it would be done? You know what I mean?
No, because the movie was so much, I couldn't have done anything more. I was like at my limit of stuff.
Right.
So I think looking back, not even looking, I don't like to look back because I'm like, that was like, I'm proud.
Right.
Moving on. Next thing, I don't want to be the lead in my movie.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely not. Like, no way. And I just think that was the hardest part about it. Like, I couldn't produce, it affected directing.
Right.
I don't want to be an actor, so it's like, definitely not next time. I want to I want to be a better director. So like to do that, I'm not going to be the lead in it. I just can't.
Because I guess you would have to delegate a lot too.
Yeah,
and that's
like it's
hard.
not your full vision.
Right.
You hope, but like essentially you're just like you can't be in that many places.
So when you were in a scene for Women Who Kill, were you running point as director as well, or did you defer some of that like in the moment evaluation to?
I didn't feel comfortable deferring that for the reason that I'm talking. Like I wanted it to be my vision. But I also wanted my heads of department to like feel invested.
Right.
And like my cinematographer, definitely his stamp on the movie.
Mm-hmm.
My producer's stamp on the movie.
Mm-hmm.
My costume designers, my production, they are in the movie. Like we all made it together for sure. On set, the day-to-day, I think it starts to get, for me at least, a little bit muddy if the crew doesn't know who the director is.
Yeah.
So that's where I was like, I don't want to do that. I want us all to be on the same page before that, hopefully. But if there's a directing thing, I'm the person.
Yeah.
So, when you're with actors and you're the lead and you're in the scene, it's easy to direct because you feel the scene. The only problem was like seeing the shot.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't watch playback that much. So like.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great service.
Good move.
Wow.
I will, thank you.
Wow.
Can I give you this as well?
You want me to take
Oh my
you
gosh,
this?
so nice.
Nice.
The
So,
nicest thing I've ever seen.
so you don't have like a desire for performance?
It's not my goal. I think if anything, it would be like a fun like side role, like a bit part or like supporting something in somebody else's. But for me, I really want to be good at what I do, like writing and directing. That's what I want to be good at, and I don't think that if I'm the actor, I'm my best self as a director.
I hear you talking about like doing the tables and all, and you like when you were writing Women Who Kill, you like rented an office and you went to work, and so is structure something that you are inherently, or is it structure something that you impose upon yourself because you need it?
Both.
Yeah.
I'm definitely like, I'm a Virgo and like OCD, and I was telling you I love spreadsheets. I'm
Yes.
a real spreadsheet person. But I think structure to me, so it's just a map. It's not like you have to like force things on by page 25. You got it. But for Women Who Kill, I did that because I was like, I want to experiment with structure. And what if on page 12 the inciting incident happens? Yeah, let's do it. I don't care. Done. And so I got really nerdy about screenplay structure, just to like see what it what it did for me, and it gave me so much. It gave me answers. It didn't limit me. Because I was like, okay, so like this thing needs to happen on page whatever. It did, and I was like, perfect. You know, so for me, it's like I don't want to go on a hike in the woods and just be like, whatever. This seems cool. I can find my way. I want like a map, and like I don't want to know where the water is. So that's kind of how I see it.
Well, the Alamo just delivered a fresh burger to you, so we want to get to that fresh burger, and we want to get down to the screening. The last thing I just like to ask is, you know, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of creative energy to put anything of yourself out there in the world, and you know, where do you go to refuel? You know, is there something? Do you go find film? More, you know, do you go to books? I mean, what's your habit?
I think. Movies I always watch, so they're never really relaxing. They're like just more a study. Mm-hmm. I think books, I think music, you know, weirdly enough, establishing a routine that I could take care of myself. Because when you're writing, like, you lose your routine. And, like, I'm not really, honestly, because I write and I direct, like, I'm not very social. Like, I don't know where people can, I don't know how you can do it if you're like, my refueling is not with people. It is definitely like away from the whole scene. So.
Well, thank you so
Hold
much.
on. We have to end with Billy's question.
Oh yeah.
Final question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Go. All right. No. So I mentioned that we do a lot of these, and independent filmmaking is, by all accounts, yours included now, a grind. And it is hard work, and you have to pour yourself into it. And so what I am very curious about is, from where you are now, looking back, when you wake up and you're having a shit day because it's just not going right and the hustle is too hard, what's the single moment that you look back at across this career that makes you go, you know what, this is worth it?
Oh, that's a good one. I've never regretted it. I'd say if there was a single moment, I started a all-female performance art theater group when I was 22, and that's where I started to realize that I could run the show.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what made me think, and so many people told me that it was ridiculous and it would never work, and then we sold out our first show, and at that point I was like, I got it.
Nice.
I'm never going to believe anybody when they tell me I can't do something, essentially.
I love it. That's a great answer. I love that answer. That's fantastic.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Yeah.
We really, really appreciate it.
Of course.
Now let's get you to your burger.
Oh, I know.
And the movie downstairs.
Yay!
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. What did I tell you? Super cool, huh?
Yeah, that was the best.
Yeah.
We didn't suck that badly. See?
I was kicking myself later. Ugh, such a nerd.
Thank you all for holding it down with in the event of my absence. I'm so proud. You did me proud.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, as you could hear there, she's super cool and was very kind and, you know, signed our Blu-rays as we nerded out with her and took photos with us.
So that's what I was going to mention. So if you look at the photo, there's Billy on the end, and then there's Brad, then Ingrid, then me, and me, Brad, and Ingrid could be a family in a Wes Anderson movie. Like, we all have the same haircut. We all have the same glasses. We're all the same skin tone. It was just like, you know, like three nerds.
And
like,
Billy's our Owen Wilson.
Oh, yeah. Billy's our Owen Wilson. I saw that picture, and I'm like, dude, we look like triplets.
Well, I really wish I could have been there. The interview's great, and I hope you all enjoyed it just as much as they enjoyed conducting it for you all. Thank you again, Ingrid. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Billy, for coming out. Thank you, Brad and Lisa.
Yeah.
Follow Billy at WBDASS, DASS on Twitter.
Yes, and also follow Wife Dork at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Follow Brian, the Turtle Dork, at The Turtle Dork on Twitter, at The Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, at Brian William Young on Facebook, and Mouth Dork is Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd.
And if listening to that interview did not convince you to watch the movie and you didn't follow my very specific instructions to watch the movie before listening to the interview, I can convince you further because there is a review of this film, Women Who Kill, on aftermoviediner.com by me, and I'm very persuasive, so you'll enjoy that. And if you want to follow Ingrid, you can follow her at Ingrid_etc. etc. At Ingrid_etc.
And she's
Twitter.
also on Instagram.
But she's not-
She's more active there.
She's not too active on Twitter. She hasn't retweeted me once.
Oh, all right. Well, if you have time after all that following, you can also follow me, the Disco Dork, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, but not Untapped. That's going to do it for us. We hope you enjoyed the interview. Enjoy the rest of your week. And until next time.